Hi friends, without a doubt, the most common question that we get here at the office and in the classes is, how can I become successful? And this is something that I enjoy talking about and explaining to students because I always say, look, there are two things we need to talk about when it comes to success. One is, what is your definition of success? It is different for every person. We have different images and ideas in our heads about what success is for us. And it is important to attain clarity. You see, when we have clarity on a goal, in other words, to me, success is this. When I'm really clear about what it is that I define as success, then we can engage more of our resources into achieving that goal. Whenever there's clarity, there's concentration of resources, there is a higher possibility of achieving a goal. But when we're scattered for lack of clarity, then we end up investing resources, mentally and otherwise, in different areas. We become scattered, there's no concentration, and it makes it much more unlikely that we're going to reach a particular goal. So the number one thing that you need for any kind of success, whether it's with your health, with your family, with your marriage, with your finances, you got to have a very, very clear goal. And I know that this is very talked about, and people, oh yeah, I know what you mean. But when we engage in this dialogue about what it really means to you to be successful, oftentimes people tell me, whoa, I thought this was easier. I thought I had this, but I can see it's a bit more, it's not very specific. And therefore, and that's the reason why we're not quite there yet. The second thing that we need to understand about success is that success is what we call in philosophy an emergent property. Emergent property. It emerges from a collection of parts that are not in themselves success. So the example that we sometimes give is you look at the brain, and if you take it apart, you say that the brain is composed of a bunch of cells, right? I mean, neurons and other things as well, but neurons. And these neurons, they don't make a brain. I mean, in other words, you can have a bucket here filled with neurons, and that's not a brain. For it to be a brain, not only do we need the right number of neurons connected the right way, a particular way, in a particular order and sequence, in other words, there's something about a brain that is very different from a neuron or even a collection of neurons. Therefore, the concept of brain is an emergent concept, and it doesn't arise simply from having a collection of neurons. Same thing with an automobile. Automobile is a concept. A car is a concept. If I throw you a bunch of screws and bolts and parts and steel and metal and plastic, and you have a clump of things over here, that's not a car. And you say, yeah, but if I put it all together, no, if you put it all together a certain way, you say in a certain sequence, in a certain way, then you no longer have a collection of parts. Now you have an emergent thing, a new thing called a car. So you get a taste for what an emergent property is. It emerges from a collection of parts, none of which is this new concept that we're talking about, such as car and parts. Well, success is like that. You see, if we put together into our lives a bunch of routines and habits and achievements and different types of things, none of which we call success, but when we put them all together in a certain way, we end up with something that we call a feeling of being successful. So success is an emergent property. Now, I myself am a consumer of these services, and I can tell you that none of us can achieve success by ourselves because we can't quite see ourselves the way that we think we see it. In other words, our vision of ourselves is not very clear. So it takes specialized feedback and intelligent help for us to change ourselves in order to achieve our own goals. So if you're only looking to quit smoking, or if you're only looking for a very small habit change, and between you and I, you can see how that sometimes is not easy. But if you're looking for something a little bit more interesting, like success or health or something like this, or higher quality of life, you realize that that's a much bigger concept. And by yourself, nobody's really by themselves, but if we were by ourselves, we would never get there. It takes interaction, feedback, and the appropriate feedback for us to make the changes that are necessary to eventually amount to a successful life. So I'm looking forward to engaging in a conversation with you, if you think this is right for you, about the quality of your life as you see it. Let's first define what a higher quality of life is for you, and later we can talk about how we can be of service for you to achieve it. All right? Thank you and blessings.